Welcome everyone to another episode of Just a Friendly Conversation. I'm your host Jesse Chen, and today I have my good friend Zach Muller with me. He's helped me numerous times since we've met. He built a PC for me and ended up encouraging me to build my own. So, I mean, he helped me build it, but he helped me pick out the parts. And when early on in our friendship, I told him I'm never going to play League of Legends, and here I am. Granted, I'm only playing against bots. I think I've played only one PvP match. I play a lot of ARAM, if that means anything. But he, on the other hand, is an expert in League of Legends, so I figured this episode would be about the recent craziness that's surrounding the League of Legends meta, as well as some esports. So what's going on, Zach?
Well, thank you, Jesse. You flatter me. I think it's hard to call anyone an expert at League of Legends. And as we'll see later on, I mean, the immense depth to this game is really kind of mind-blowing.
I remember, when I thought I grasped this game, and then you just introduced an entirely new side where I'm just like, I don't know anything. So I'm excited to learn a lot more about it. And this is why I love doing the show, is because I'm actually learning a lot of stuff and having a nice, friendly conversation with people. So, I mean, let's get right into it. You were telling me the other day when I brought up, I told you I wanted to have you on the show, and you're telling me, Jesse, there's some crazy changes going on in League. And granted, I haven't played in a while, so I have no idea. All I know is that I tried playing Kled today, and I was seeing builds all over the place for it. And you're telling me, I know you said something about top laners and ADCs are getting mixed up. So what's going on, man?
Yeah, it started with the mid-season update, right? Okay. So in between the spring and summer competitive seasons or splits, Riot does a mid-season update. And so usually it's contained in one massive patch during MSI, the mid-season invitational. And they try to change a lot of the game and get it to a really good point going into summer, which then leads into Worlds. Because ideally, going into Worlds, you have a really solid, well-balanced game that'll be fun to watch, but fair from a competitive standpoint. This season, Riot sort of switched it up a little bit, and they broke their big mid-season update into 4 or 5 smaller patches.
Uh-huh.
And as a result, they sort of just went, I think, a little wild because they realized how much patch space they had to work with. And they kind of delegated a patch to each role, top, jungle, mid, ADC, and support. But really the biggest takeaway from this whole, all these changes has been the groundbreaking change to the bot lane and the ADC role, which once upon a time was interchangeable to call the bot lane or the ADC because it was always an attack damage carry marksman. But now it could be anything, mages, tanks, bruisers have all been getting a lot more play bot, and teams are realizing completely different team comps that are available.
Now, was this Riot's intention to get more people to play bot lane, or you think they were just trying to shake things up and that's kind of just how it drifted?
No, I don't think so at all. I think coming off of spring, crit marksmen were very powerful and sort of dominating the meta. Mm-hmm. And so naturally, as a response to that, they tuned down some crit items and made ADCs in general a little bit weaker as a result. And then at the same time, they had a top lane and jungle patches that started tuning up bruisers and tanks. And so you saw their power spiking as ADC marksmen fell. And so all of a sudden there was this big power difference in the meta where it made more sense to take a more powerful tank or bruiser over a weak marksman in the bot lane. And so I don't think it was Riot's intention, but it was sort of, the player base is so smart and so creative that, immediately they sort of saw this opportunity to do something different and they went all in for it. And then, competitive teams started picking it up.
Now, have you heard reactions from other players about this? Is it a pretty positive reaction? Are people having fun with it?
It's very mixed. I don't spend a ton of time on the League of Legends subreddit because it's pretty much a toxic cesspool. But I'm a big fan. You're not wrong. But I'm a big fan of /r/Summoner School,
Mm-hmm.
which is really more focused on developmental and improving your game at League of Legends. And even there was a lot of negativity from like ADC mains that all of a sudden they felt like their role was eliminated from the game because they try to play Caitlyn bot and they would be getting destroyed by like a brand Darius bot lane, which is just so silly. And so there's definitely a lot of negativity from ADC mains, but I think in all, it's been a very positive change
Mm-hmm.
because that's been the one role pretty much since like season one when players came up with the duo bot lane meta.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time that there's been a different kind of champion played in the bot lane role. And in all other roles, people have been forced to morph and change with the patches. So like I'm a support main and I've been forced to learn, mage supports and then tank supports, and now the supports like Pike coming out, I'm like learning how to play an assassin champ. And so all the other roles have learned to be much more flexible. And I think in my opinion and overall in the community's opinion, it's about time really that the bot lane has had to learn to adapt and adjust and try a different kind of champ.
That's incredible. So what are some more of the like some more like how are the ban rates? I should say of how is this affecting some ban rates? Because like I think Aurelia last time it was a while ago when I checked, Aurelia had an extremely high ban rate. Does this stay high now she can be moved to bot lane?
Yeah, so certainly bans have shifted from some of the most powerful ADCs to some of the more powerful bruisers and tanks.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some interesting things happening with the bans, right? Like there are a few ADCs that have remained viable for different reasons, such as Kai'Sa, Ezreal, Lucian, mostly because they can build items that aren't crit based and turn on sooner and be more viable sooner in the game.
Gotcha.
But because there's so few of them, a team, even in like a random draft game with in solo queue, can ban out all the potential ADCs. So that's interesting because before you couldn't conceivably ban out a whole role, right?
Yeah.
But like a team can ban out all the viable AD carry marksmen just like that. And then on the flip side, as you're saying, champions like Darius, Aurelia, even like Talon, like those bruiser, AD, assassin types have been getting a lot more play, not only in their typical lane, like top or mid, but also in bot. And so it's become a much higher value ban, especially in competitive, to ban Aurelia, because you're not just banning their mid laners champ, you're banning their mid, top, jungle, bot, support laners champ. And so it's definitely had a huge impact on bans from both perspectives, competitively and in solo queue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of just it's like almost like for someone like me, for it's like if I'm not playing it for him, I'm like, oh crap, who do I choose to ban? It's kind of like easy for me now because it's like, okay, I can vote for this person and know that I have an argument there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so what I'm getting from this and what kind of makes me at least happy about this is you're seeing a lot of champs that weren't played before because they're outclassed, getting play again, right? Because this new kind of I won't even call it a new role, but like kind of like this door opened up where a lot more people can be played in the ADC role. I know you mentioned Ziggs could be viable now, right?
Yeah, so in addition to the tanky bruisers we talked about, there's been
Yeah.
a lot of mage bot lanes. And competitive teams, in fact, have gone so far that they'll bench their traditional AD carry player,
Mm-hmm.
like in the NALCS, and take the mid laner off of their academy team and put them bot. So they have two traditional mid laners because they're playing double mage comps. So champs like Ziggs, Brand, Karma, Zyra, champs that were traditionally mid mages or supports are getting played as carries in the bot lane because they can buy one AP item and be really effective, and they have lockup and can get kills, get ahead, and snowball the game and end a game in 20 minutes the way crit ADCs can't right now because they need to get they have to get their AD item, they have
Mm-hmm.
to get their attack speed boots, and they have to get a crit item, and then they have to get Infinity Edge, and all of a sudden you need 3 or 4 items to become applicable.
That's this is awesome, and like I again like I was looking at it myself. I was on pro builds earlier. That's kind of where I get the stuff I use to, like, that's just when I head into a game, because I'm still quite new. I can't think for myself yet. And I'm just seeing so many new things right now, and it kind of threw me off guard because I had all these pre-made builds of just items to look for going into a game. Now it's all changed, and I don't know. This thing's starting off whack too. So, like, was this update? Let's say, was it like well advertised before the actual release date, where people like hyping it up and kind of getting ready to see it, or did it just come out and everyone was like left to fend for themselves?
Absolutely the latter. People had no idea what was coming, and then it slapped them square in the face. It was, I mean, it's definitely a big surprise. From my perspective, I started playing in Season 3, right?
Yeah.
And actually, in my opinion, the game has sort of gotten a little stale. And someone who's very creative and always likes to try like different things. Like I've probably tried every champion in the game in the support role. Last season, if you did anything that wasn't like well-defined meta, you get flamed for it, even just like in normal draft. But with this change, and there's so much chaos going on, you can do anything, and people are like, "Oh, okay, maybe this guy knows what he's doing. Maybe this shit is meta." And so you get these really fun, creative, bot lane combinations that people wouldn't originally have been so open to. But definitely from a newer player's perspective, like I have friends like you or friends that started in Season 5 or Season 6 and have just really started to feel like they fully understand the game, because it had been pretty standard for like the past 3 or so years. They finally feel like they have a deep understanding and they know everything, and they feel like the carpet's just been pulled up from under them, and all of a sudden everything's changing, and it can be frustrating for people who, they don't have enough they haven't amassed enough game knowledge to know immediately what items they need to build or what runes they should run just instinctively. And so, people like set up builds ahead of time, and all of a sudden, nope, that item got nerfed, that item was removed, this new item is added. And so, yeah, it's definitely, it's a chaotic time in League of Legends, but I think it's good, certainly for the health of the game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it even for me, it was growing, like when you're telling me all this stuff, I was noticing too. I'm like, okay, so it just kind of seems like the same thing despite the seasons. Yeah, they introduce some new champs or whatever. Those new champs are great, then they get nerfed, and like it's just kind of how it rolls. But when you introduce this to me, I'm like kind of curious, and like again, I know I said this before, but I'm excited to be able to play some of the characters that I normally was unable to play. Or I guess yes, I could play them in normal PvP mode, but I was discouraged a little bit when especially when you say stuff like they're outclassed. Excuse me, they're outclassed, so people don't really it doesn't see play in a competitive level as much. A lot of those characters are returning, and like you said, I think if anything, it almost helps the toxic kind of nature League has, because you'll get less judged. You'll be more, you'll still be judged for how you play the character, but you'll be less judged by which character you pick, because it's second guessing. And I imagine people are still trying to figure out this patch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think people are still trying to figure out patch 8.10, and we're on patch 8.13. Certainly, like the speed at which things are changing is kind of unprecedented. But that's exciting, and you're very right that I think it's actually reduced a little bit of flame and toxicity, because people who just like are old armchair veterans of the game no longer know if they know everything that's correct. And they're forced to be more open to new possibilities.
And now you don't know, like before it's like, oh, this guy picked this, he has to suck at the game. Now he's like, oh wait, he could either suck or he could be really creative. And yeah, so that leads me to this question: what's the craziest thing you've seen so far that made it into it, like that actually can end up working? Like, what's the big with this update? What did it affect where it's like it's really cool that it changed it, but it's also pretty crazy? It could be a champion coming back into the meta. It could be a certain build just being completely opposite of what it used to be or whatever. I'm just curious.
Well, the thing that comes to mind immediately is the newest chic strat in the competitive world, gold funneling. And so far we've talked a lot about all the changes to the bot lane role, But something we haven't really covered yet is the concept of gold funneling, which started in Korean solo queue and has quickly spread throughout all of the competitive regions, and throughout like my personal solo queue games, I'll encounter funnel strats. And so essentially what funneling is a you'll have typically like a jungler role will play a support, and then you'll have a like a hard scaling mid laner, like a Kaisa or a Master Yi, someone who like can 1v5 a team if they get really ahead.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is you'll have the jungle support and the mid laner roaming through the jungle, feeding all of the gold to the Kaisa or the Yi, the mid laner, and also walking through mid to clear the mid wave. So you'll clear top jungle and then go mid, and then clear bot jungle and then go mid. And so the concept is gold funneling, in that you're essentially using a second champion, where usually that jungler would be taking all of their own jungle gold and funneling like 2 times the gold into one champion.
To just overfund them so they could, best case scenario, like you said, 1v5 somebody.
Right, exactly. And so what happens is you'll get a champ that's a couple levels ahead, maybe a full item ahead of anyone else in the game.
Which is significant.
And then they can pop off, And so like, at the very beginning of the gold funneling strat, like the thing to do was Master Yi and Taric, which I actually did a lot of with my jungling friend, and it was hilarious. Because Taric has an ultimate that gives you immunity.
Okay.
And so we would roam mid and jungle and get him really ahead, and then he would just dive into the team. I would make 1v5 the team, because he has items and armor penetration that like the rest of the other team hasn't even built armor yet. They don't even know this guy is fed until it's too late.
And at that point, they're going to be back on their heels trying to recover from this, while you're only getting stronger.
Right.
That's incredible. Is there an item? Did you mention an item that helps with this?
Not particularly. There wasn't like one item. Certainly some of the changes to Guinsoo's Rage Blade, which is one of the few hybrid AP AD items in the game, was really strong for a time. And it still is, which made champs like Kaisa still viable in the bot lane, and for gold funneling, as well as Yi, who could benefit from both AP and AD damage. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, that's a lot about the patch. Now, I want to move on our topic a little bit onto I mentioned earlier, you were telling me before the show something about Rift Rivals, which is, I've been seeing a lot of stuff thrown in my face about it, and I genuinely did not know what was going on. I didn't read much into it, so I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what Rift Rivals is they started it last year. It's a competition between like rival regions of the world, right? And so it happens in the middle of summer split. So like the NALCS, they've played 3 competitive weeks, and then they take a week off to do Rift Rivals. And so it happens between NA and EU. It happens between Korea, Taiwan, and China. And so it's all these smaller international tournaments between regions that are somewhat like, they have proximity to each other, and so they're rivals, and some more than others, but certainly North America and Europe has always had a pretty large rivalry, mostly because we tend to be worse than all the Korean, Chinese, and Taiwanese teams. So we're usually at international tournaments just battling not to be the worst team there, And so I've sort of developed this this rivalry of like, we just want to beat, the other really bad region. And so Rift Rivals is a really fun idea. Last year it was hosted in Europe. This year it was hosted in NA. And it's really fun. I think, they combine casters from NA and EU, and they're shit-talking each other. And they do some fun events mixed in with the actual competitive games. And so the first year of Rift Rivals, NA won. And then for the past 3 days, they've been playing this year's Rift Rivals, where the competing teams were Liquid, Echo Fox, and 100 Thieves for NA. The top 3 teams from Spring Split, and for EU it was G2, Fnatic, and Splice. And something that's interesting about the format is that they take the top 3 teams from the end of Spring Split, not the current top 3 teams in the region. and they have to do that because they need lead time to figure out visas. Because ideally, they would take the top 3 teams from the end of 3 weeks and throw them in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't be enough time for teams to figure out travel and visa and lodging. And so as a result, the top 3 teams from spring might necessarily be the top 3 current teams. So like EU sent over Splice, who hadn't won a game yet in Europe. And so, they're like a relatively bad team, and, 100 Thieves has had their struggles for NA. But yeah, Rift Rivals happened. I don't know. I guess I'll put up a spoiler alert before I announce one.
Yeah, no. If there's spoilers, I can always throw the spoiler tag in front of the episodes. The magic of editing. So that'll be great.
3, 2, 1. EU won.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the first 2 days was group stage. Every team played every other team, and EU came out 1 game ahead. So going into today, what they had done last year was it was just the best EU team played the best NA team in a 5-game series, and the winner won Rift Rivals for the region. What they did this year, which I think is actually really unique and much more representative of the strength of a region, is EU won the group stage, which means they get the first pick. But what happens is all 3 teams are still competing. So what EU did was they got to see which team NA picked to play, and then EU would pick one of their 3 teams to play against them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first 3 games, each of the teams had to play once. So all 3 teams had a game, at least. So the NA for the first game picked Echo Fox, and then EU got to look at it and decide which team they wanted to throw against Echo Fox to counter them. And they picked G2. And then the next game, NA picked 100 Thieves, and so EU threw Fnatic at them. And so it was a really unique thing because it wasn't a 5-game series of 1 team versus 1 team, but it was like a 5-game series of 3 teams versus 3 teams, and the coaches from each 3 teams had to decide, okay, our team would fit best against this team. And so there's a lot of collaboration that really made it felt like it was one region battling another region.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I like it, like the step away. It's almost like there's like I don't know. It's like it's instead of like managing your players, you're managing teams to help with matchups. It's like the teams are your players instead. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's really cool though. So, who out of the you gave me the sad face. Who are you really rooting for from NA? Like, I don't know. What's your favorite team from them?
Well, personally, my favorite team in NA is Cloud9.
Yeah, I do know.
who didn't make it. I guess, of the remaining 3, I guess I'm a Team Liquid fan because they were formerly Team Curse, which was my original favorite team before
they tried doing a lot with their brand. Team Liquid's everywhere.
Oh yeah, no, Team Liquid has definitely exploded.
Yeah, they tried their hand in a lot of different things. I was always a fan of them myself, just because back in my StarCraft 2 days, they were very prominent. They had a lot of the good players on their team. But that's aside the point. So yeah, I mean, it's Team Liquid's usually a team I root for. I've heard of Fnatic before. I had no clue that they were actually an EU team though. Do you think that NA had a chance this year, or were you just mainly just rooting for them because it's home, like a home team?
No, I think NA definitely. I mean, they had a very considerable chance. So coming out of group stage, EU had won 5 games and NA had won 4 games, right? So really, it couldn't have been closer. I think when you're looking at the power rankings of teams, I think most people probably had G2 as being the strongest EU team, or like the strongest team there, and then Liquid was second, and then Fnatic was third, and then Echo Fox was fourth, and then 100 Thieves was fifth, and Splice was sixth. And so, it's very interwoven. It was very much a very even match going into it, which was a big contrast to last year, when last year NA won in a huge upset and everyone thought EU was going to crush them. And so, if anything, I actually had, more hope than last year that NA would win. And the very first game of Rift Rival of the final day today, where they were doing 3 teams versus 3 teams, Echo Fox actually had a big upset against G2. So no, I had a lot of hope, which quickly drained away in the following 3 matches.
So, what would you say if I had to watch one match from all of this entire series? What would you recommend?
Ooh, damn. Um, well, there was certainly a ton of hype and excitement for me and for the fans watching the Echo Fox versus G2 game,
All right.
just because you weren't expecting Fox to win, and so there's sort of like you could see in the way they played that like no one expected them to win. They didn't expect themselves to win, and they just went for it. And you could see like they just like went for plays, and sometimes it didn't work, but when it did, it was like miraculous and incredible. But certainly, I think the most interesting game to watch might have actually been the 100 Thieves Fnatic game, where Fnatic had a slight edge, was predicted to have a slight edge, and they ended up winning, but it was very close the whole way, and definitely had a lot more tense moments, I think. So, either of those games, probably the Fnatic 100 Thieves overall would be more exciting though.
Gotcha. Wow, this is honestly like more about. I actually had no clue you knew that much actually about League Esports. So learned something about you today as well, Zach. Thank you so much for talking to me about this. I actually learned a ton about this. And actually, I'll be honest. I stopped playing League for a while, but you got me all excited to pick it up again. I did play today. I played a match today, so maybe you can coach me a little bit more on. I mean, originally I like to play a lot of top lane, so I guess that's gonna have to change a little bit now too, right? All
You
right.
can play anything anywhere,
Yeah,
Jesse.
honestly. Well, thank you for your time, Zach. It was nice having you on here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of future episodes. Maybe more than just League of Legends, but I certainly like talking to you about the game. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button. There's gonna be more episodes in the future. Thank you all, and I'll see you guys later.